Hey, welcome back to my channel. This is Spencer Colgan, and thank you for joining me on this wallpaper hanging video. This video is geared for beginners, the do-it-yourselfer, the new paper hanger, how to hang wallpaper in a bathroom. Bathrooms are popular places to hang wallpaper in the entire room. And so you have your typical obstacles, which are vanities, floating vanities, pedestal sinks, toilets that are attached to the wall, toilets that are far away from the wall, and toilets that give you this much space between the bowl and the wall. Your light fixture and your doorway. That's for powder bath. And then of course, in a bathroom, you have the tub and the shower stall. All things considered, is it the right product for the job? That's up to the homeowner, the designer. And for a good paper hanger, you should know your stuff so that you could at least make a preliminary comment as to whether or not the product you're hanging is practical. And then after that, the homeowner can do what he or she wants. For example, within the last 3 weeks, I've hung a silk in a bathroom. And the first thing anyone will notice about silk is that if it gets a droplet of water on it, it looks like a white couch got a black crayon on it. It dries and it disappears. But that's what wetness looks like on silk. So it may not be a practical product. But after that, you get down to the basics of hanging. Where do I start? What paste do I use? Do I have the right tools to do the job? Now, if you're a new paper hanger, you have those tools. But if you're the do-it-yourselfer, I can tell you that you would rather go out and spend the money on the tools to have the right tools rather than try to get around the right tools to use. For example, let me show you my smoother. The smoother that you use can make or break the job. This is a wide fan smoother. Okay, it's pretty wide. This is a smaller version of that. And this I use as a smoother. And then there's the brush. I just don't have it with me in front of me. Then there's the seam roller. You could use a rubber roller. I'm not saying these tools are interchangeable or you can just choose which one, but one product might call for something with a firm rubber roller. You might want to use a foam roller. Okay. So the job will dictate what tool you use. Now I know that might have just stolen your thunder. I don't know what to use. Well, why don't you just watch me in this video and just see what I use. For example, the roller that you use may be affected by texture, if any. So there are steel rollers, steel seam rollers. If you were to roll your seam with hard steel, you're going to make a marring on the wall covering. You'll make it shiny. But if you use a rubber roller, not going to do that, or a foam roller, that's not going to do that either. So once you have your tools set up, the first thing you want to make sure is that you start in the right place. You just don't wing it. Say, I'm going to start here. This seems easiest. Well, let me show you how you might go about planning where you start your layout. So if you take your wallpaper, which is 27 inches, and you say, what if I started here? I like that. The wallpaper would end up halfway between the vanity. It would cover this space in here. I like where it ends. Then I come over to here and it ends here. I like that. I like that. But look what happens when I get to the corner. I don't like that. It's not a good idea to end wallpaper in the corner. But I've gone around this room 3 times. And there is no ideal place that will give me 6 inches from the corner and land ideally behind this bowl and around this vanity. But ideally, you want your wallpaper to end 6 inches away from the corner. Okay? If you consider the bowl, you want the whole sheet behind the bowl. But look what that does if we do that here. It gives me 3 inches of wallpaper on the end. That's not ideal. So if you can't get it behind the bowl completely, you want to do half. And say, oh, I want my seam right here. That would work. You never want to come up to a vanity and have this happen to you. That's not good. You want to bring it over to here. Now watch this. You want to take into account this. So the wallpaper should exceed that line. You see what I mean? If you just went here and say, oh, I reached the vanity. I'd say, did you? Yeah, you're gonna have a strip there. Okay, so you get the idea. You don't want the wallpaper ending here. Look. You don't want it ending there. You want that whole place covered. Okay, so these are the things you want to take into account when you go around and you say, where do I start my wallpaper? Where you start your wallpaper is not the most important thing regarding where the first sheet lands. It's the first sheet determines where every other sheet lands. So determining where to start determines where every sheet will land. So in that sense, finding out where to put the first sheet is the same thing as to say, where do you put all the other sheets? So I'm using a laser level. I projected a straight line against which I will hang the right side of my first sheet. My left side of the first sheet will come over onto this wall, this much. It didn't work out no matter where I put it, so that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to show you how we make this piece straight after we get into this corner. Corners are never straight. And this one, if you look right at the center of your screen, you see that curvature? You see it go like that? Do you see it do this? So the wallpaper will have to fit into that curvature. But that means when you cut it in that corner to fill in that unevenness, this has to be adjusted. This sheet over here. So as you can see, it's a paste the wall product. That's a pasting brush, and that solid vertical line is the wall. Paste the wall. And that's what we did. Okay, using the green laser, I'm going to pull my sheet right into that laser, right? So that we know that it's straight. You see how the laser tells me where my sheet should end? Okay. Now, let's talk about dark wallpaper. When you're hanging dark wallpaper, there's always a chance that the color is going to come off. Just by working it into the wall. For that reason, you don't want to smooth this stuff against texture too roughly with a plastic smoother. Can you see the texture starting to come through the product? So if I were to rub this too hard, not only would the color come off, but the color would come off more so on these bumps. Okay? So, because of friction, you can see highs and lows there. Well, the highs will be where most of the friction takes place. Consequently, since most of the friction will take place at high points, it is at the high points where you can expect the color to be compromised if you are too rough laying out the product. Smooth applicator. I'm using a microfiber cloth. Okay? Okay. As you work the material into the corner, using only your finger to push it into the corner at which horizontal meets vertical, just your finger so you don't tear it. You put your smoother up in there, put your knife against the smoother, and drag it that way, keeping it close to the ceiling. And your paper should cut nicely against the ceiling. See that? I get my microfiber and I just gently wipe around the paper, and that's it. You don't want to wipe this stuff down too much. Now we've taken paint, matching it to the paint in the wallpaper, and we've painted behind the wallpaper. And that is so. If we have a place where the seam hairline splits, we have the color of the wall rather than white or some other color. We have a matching color behind the wall covering. Remember how I said the corner wasn't straight? Well, this piece is going to fill in those 3 inches, actually this is about 4, on the adjacent wall. But watch what I'm doing. I'm putting my smoother up against the already done wall, creating a 1/8 of an inch extra in the wallpaper that will go on to the next wall. Because remember, it's hard to get this piece of wallpaper into the corner since it's so wavy. So rather than have a gap, we want a little bit of a lip here. We want some leeway. I'll bring you up close. We want some leeway so we can put our thin piece of wallpaper over it. And we may have to move it just a bit to make it straight. So here's our sheet of wallpaper, right? And so we came to this wall and we want a little wallpaper onto this wall. You see it there? It's 1/8 of an inch. So if I would have cut it this way, put my smoother here and cut it against here, now I messed up. Because then I would be short. You wouldn't be filling in the corner. This fills in the corner and brings the wallpaper onto this wall. When I get to the baseboard, as I did at the top, I'm just going to make a little crease in my wallpaper. And I'm going to firmly press my blade against the trim. And I'm going to pull my blade incrementally so that I get clean cut. All right. So now, in order to make this connecting sheet straight, I am putting a laser line where I think I'm going to have to trim it up to. So I know my line is crooked here, the corner. So I'm guesstimating, I've taken 3/16 of an inch and I'm going to move it in. If I connect in the corner, then I'm going to trim it in the corner. In other words, I'm going to be overlapped in the corner in some areas where the corner isn't straight. But I'm guesstimating based on my experience that this will give me, at some point in this vertical run, my wallpaper will meet perfectly in the corner with this threshold here. That's my guess. Let's see if I'm right. As you can see, or as you will see, my guesstimation was perfectly correct. I meet up perfectly in the corner here. Remember, I underlapped this piece of paper under this one. And you see the perfect transition in this corner here. But as we go down here, let me try to point it out to you. It's a dark paper. But do you see how much the wallpaper comes out here? Look, I'll try to lift it up. You see that? Look. That's 3/16 of an inch. So my corner is off 3/16 of an inch. So I'm going to trim that excess while the rest of the paper enjoys a perfect connection. And now this forward edge is straight for the next piece. If I didn't make this straight, guess what? Your next piece is not straight. I hope everyone understands what I just did. It's very important. If you don't, please ask a question below. So when I trim this excess, I come up with this. See? That way, we're getting rid of that little piece of pattern in order for this to be straight, plumb. And I'll trim the top and that little excess here the same way I showed you below. Now that we've hung the first sheet, we've covered how to trim it at the bottom, at the top, where to begin, why to begin where you begin, coloring the wall underneath if necessary. By the way, I didn't paint this. I don't do things like this. Don't do it. So, in case you were wondering, when I say we, I asked the homeowner, would you like me to paint it or do you want to paint it? She said, I'll paint it. Okay. So, this is a very important lesson. In fact, it's the most important lesson we've covered so far. Making the corner plumb. Now in the UK, you'll see a mathematical, very methodical approach which achieves the same result. The tradesmen in the UK they're very sharp. And when they teach something, they are going right by the school book instruction. And these are veteran paper hangers. And I like it. But I gotta be honest, I like to simplify it. And the way I do it is, when you see that part of this strip meets in the corner, look above and below. If you have a gap, push the wallpaper this way, you have to. If you're overlapped down here and you're perfect up here, you know you have to trim that off in the corner. And vice versa. I don't need the mathematical equation, it's going to complicate you. If any part of this strip meets the corner, that you don't want to trim any further than that unless you must. And you must if after you meet in the corner, you're overlapped either below or above. Okay? You're either going to have a gap in the corner, in which case it means you're going to have to bring the wallpaper into the corner and then make it straight from that point. If that makes it overlap, the overlap must be trimmed. If you have a gap anywhere, it has to go toward the corner, and you stop when the gap is filled. When this is straight, then you trim the excess in the corner. There's no need for an equation. It's a simple logical process. Okay. No need for me to tell you how to hang this sheet over and over and over again. So I'm going to hang this wallpaper in this room and get back on the next frame where you'll benefit from it. So if you have followed the rule with this little strip, you won't have any wiggling back and forth when this whole piece meets up with here. You can't even see the seam. Okay, so that's why I wanted to show you that. So we started out here. And all I did was, I didn't want to bore you. I went this way. Then I went that way. But when I got over here, I brought this sheet up to here and this sheet up to here and I blended them together, which you shouldn't be able to see. Now, since we're working on texture, as you can see this texture, you see that? Well, if you use a roller that's too hard, you're gonna mar, it's gonna become shiny. And so if any of your seams are standing proud, we just roll them after the install. Just down nice and easy. Because the seam, this edge should meet this edge. Nothing should be standing out. And if you use a soft roller like this, you won't make your wall covering shiny. It's a very good investment. What do you think? If you like the video, please click on like, subscribe, become a member.